Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason and I'm here to bring you fight picks and a fight review or a retrospective. So going forward, and this is something I've been thinking about for a little while now, we're going to combine the retrospective show into the fight picking show for next week's card. Basically what will end up happening is the fight picks will come out in their normal day, Monday, Tuesday, and the retrospective show will just ultimately be pushed forward a bit to give us one combined show. I haven't seen a whole lot of demand for the retrospective on its own. I'm still going to provide that accountability and go over our fight picks, good or bad, but I want to let you guys know that we are changing the release schedule and kind of the format of the shows a little bit because it seems like that is a little bit better format for me and for what people want to listen to. We have a pretty good demand for the fight picking shows, and the retrospective is just not quite as much, so we'll try to put them together. I'm going to try to shorten the retrospective portion of it, kind of keep it into a short segment of the fight picking show, and then the fight picking show will be its normal regular length, so we'll end up with one slightly longer show overall instead of two long or medium-sized shows. Alright, so we have to talk about UFC 249. We have to talk about the event on Wednesday, May 13th, where Anthony Smith will be taking on Glover Teixeira. We have an awesome night of fights ahead of us. We had a great night of fights behind us. Let's get into it. Here's the show. Alright, let's talk a little bit about UFC 249. So, before I even get into any of the retrospective for any single fight, I've been kind of thinking about this since the card ended, and it was really bittersweet for me. I went to bed feeling a little bit bummed out, and it wasn't just because we didn't have like a super awesome night of fights. At least from the picking perspective, we went 7-4. Let's get that out of the way. We went 7-4. That's 63% accuracy. So we did pretty well. I did miss the Patreon picks, unfortunately, and I think those are the ones that are hardest for me to kind of deal with. And it's not the fact we lost. Let me tell you why. I think it was just a bittersweet night for MMA fans in general. We saw the end of an era, the end of the Tony Ferguson era. His mystique has been shattered. The win streak is done, and we saw him very handily dismantled. This wasn't a loss where a fan of Tony could say, he just didn't quite have it. He was totally destroyed by Gaethje, and it's a sad turn of affairs for a guy that may now never fight Khabib. And I'm not saying that fight it could still be a good fight, but I don't see it ever happening, to be perfectly honest. And so now we enter the Gaethje versus Khabib ever, and maybe that's a better version. Maybe it actually happens, comes to fruition. But the Tony era, as we've come to love Tony, know Tony, that mystique is gone, and there's nothing we can really do about it. Tony's chin is going to be on question going forward. He was pretty badly injured when that stoppage came in, and it is what it is. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'm not a striking expert, but maybe Tony just trained a little too much for that ground game, and so he wasn't fully prepared coming in. I honestly don't know what the issue was, but end of an era. Speaking of eras as well, in the bantamweight side of things, Henry Cejudo, Dominic Cruz. So two eras end here as well, in my opinion. We have Henry Cejudo's era ending with him walking away for retirement. He's walking away on top, though. Can't say anything bad about the guy. He definitely, deserves everything that he's accomplished. He's a hardworking guy. When he is on the microphone, not being Triple C, the king of cringe, he is pretty entertaining and nice to listen to. He's an inspirational figure, I'm sure, for a lot of us. But it's the end of an era. He's walking away, and Dominic Cruz, I think, is going to have to decide or be forced to walk away at this point. To talk a little bit about what led up to that, it was a weird sequence of events, in my opinion, that led to Cruz losing. Now, he might have lost anyways. Cejudo's game plan was very good. He stuck to it. He didn't get frustrated. He used the leg kicks, and even when Cruz did clip him at times, especially in the second round, Cruz started landing a bit more. I think that Cejudo's game plan probably would have worked out at the end of the day. I've never seen anybody execute leg kicks against Cruz like that, and I think that was a good pathway. Would have been interesting in the later rounds to see what happened there, but I think he had a slight edge there. And so the sequence of events, though, that transpires, we have a headbutt, similar to what happened almost in a way. And I said during the fight, obviously it didn't go down this way, but this kind of happened when Cruz last fought Garbrandt, right? They had a clash of heads. Cruz was wobbled, and I think that's actually what derailed him mostly in that fight. But they had the clash of heads, and Cruz didn't get a stoppage there, but Cejudo gets a stoppage. And I understand, different subjectiveness of the referees. And I didn't think the cut was that bad on Henry. It did bleed a lot, but I didn't think it was that bad. It was a small cut. Wasn't anything like what Jeremy Stevens got in his outing. And they stopped it. They had a quick check, and then they reset them. There's 21 seconds left in the fight, I believe, at that point. And a couple things there. So, one, Cruz has the fight stopped after there's a clash of heads, and, he probably could have capitalized on that. And I didn't think the cut necessarily warranted stoppage. I mean, you can argue with me there if you want. It's a fair argument. Then they put him back in. I think that doctors checking on the cut was extremely fast, and so now, we're throwing off everybody's timing. 3, Henry Cejudo, he realizes he is cut, and there is potential to stop this fight, so he has to put the gas pedal down. So he changes up the game plan on the fly, and, it's still Cruz's fault that he gets clipped, but he ends up in a sequence of events where he gets a big knee. He did duck a lot through Cejudo. He picks up that knee, and he goes down. I mean, it's probably the hardest we've seen Cruz ever go down. And then, Cejudo ground and pounds his way to victory. This is all transpiring with seconds left on the clock, and Cruz is returning to his feet when Peterson steps in. Did Peterson step in too early is the question. And, it's his subjective opinion, and I honestly think that he stepped in just a little too early. The problem for me is that these are two veterans. These are guys fighting for the title. This is not a guy that's, 4-1 fighting a guy that's like 6-2. They're early in their careers, and a quick hook is definitely important. We're talking about a lot of money on the line, a lot of pride on the line, potentially the last fight for either one of these guys, and I just would have liked to have seen it go a little bit longer. Could have had the same outcome, and I think Cruz could have lived with that same outcome. But Peterson going in and taking it away from him after everything he's done, you got to think for a second. Cruz has not been the best loser in this situation, but he's coming back from a 3-year layoff, 3.5 year layoff, and he feels good in there. He looked good in there. His movement was way better than it looked in the Garbrandt fight, and I think he was pretty healthy. I think we had an old Cruz. I don't know if his footwork his speed was quite there, like he had when he was a younger man. But either way, we had a version of Cruz that has won championships before, and for Keith Peterson to step in and take that away from Cruz when he's, just been on the couch recovering from all of his injuries, I can definitely understand the emotional nature of him leading up to, his words for Peterson, which I'm not sure what was said. I don't think we could quite hear them. And then later on in his interview saying that he smelled like cigarettes and alcohol, totally possible. I mean, Peterson could have had a beer and smoked a cigarette before he went out there. I don't know what kind of regulations they have, in Florida or in general for these guys. Was Peterson drunk? Nah, I don't think he was drunk. Had he had a drink beforehand? I don't no idea. It's the Wild West out there. And I don't think what Cruz said is necessarily inaccurate. I think it just paints a bad picture. I think it calls into question the integrity of a little bit of the sport, because why is he allowed to drink, and then calls in the integrity of Peterson for sure. And I don't know. I know I'm giving this a lot of time here on the show, but I was just really just kind of shaken up by these two contests, just because I think Cruz is done. I think Cejudo obviously is voluntarily done. And then Tony's era is done. It's a bittersweet night for MMA fans. And then just kind of the last bittersweet moment here. It's not bittersweet. It's sad. Donald Cowboy Cerrone loses now 4 in a row. He loses to Pettis. It was a questionable call in my opinion. I don't think Pettis won all those rounds. He had some 27-30 calls for his decision, but Either way, Cowboy has to take another loss. It's 4 losses in a row. And when does Cowboy hang up his spurs? We are now, I think, looking at that situation. The Cowboy that said, "I'm not afraid of Khabib, I'm coming for you." That guy's not here anymore, and he might be inside that that body mentally, but his body cannot cash those checks that his mind is writing, and he just isn't quite there. So, a little sad. End of several eras. For the other fights that were out there, though, guys like Calvin Kattar stepping up big, proving that they can get it done at big stage against Jeremy Stephens. Just really nasty knockout. I'm sure he would have gotten a fight night bonus had they had a gate, but he definitely deserved one. And then we saw some other, good fights as well. I mean, they were all amazing fights. Bryce Mitchell is going to be a force to be reckoned with. His jiu-jitsu is so tight. I was not as impressed with Ryan Spann and Greg Hardy in their contest, but, it is what it is. And then Francis Ngannou, holy hell. Jairzo Rozenstruik he dodged 3 or 4 of those big swinging shots, but he could not get out of the way of the last one. He ran out of real estate backing up to the cage. And, Ngannou is a force to be reckoned with. We knew that going in, though. Anyways, like I said, we went 7-4 here. I'll just tell you the ones that we got wrong rather than the ones we got right. We missed Gaethje Ferguson. We had Ferguson in that one. We missed Cejudo Cruz. We had Cruz in that one. We missed Pettis Cerrone. We had Cerrone in that one. And then we missed Luque Price. We had Price in that one. So 7-4, good percentage for us. The only problem is all of the Patreon picks were for those underdogs. So we missed Cruz, we missed Cerrone, and we missed Price. So bad night on the Patreon picks. I do apologize for that one, but hey, it just so happened the only real ones I got wrong for the most part happened to be the picks that I made on that show. But still with a positive percentage, so decent overall. And so that's our review, our look back at UFC 249. Let's go ahead and look forward here to next week's card. All right, that takes us on to the fight picks, where we are going to have an unusual event taking place again in Jacksonville, Florida on May 13th. So that's going to be Wednesday. Mark your calendars. I believe it's starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And this card is looking pretty decent. We have some kind of sleeper fights on there. We obviously have the veterans at light heavyweight and Anthony Smith taking on Glover Teixeira, and let's start there with that contest. So you're going to be a little bit surprised by this one. I'm not going with the home invasion champion or defender of his belt. I'm going with the older, saltier veteran in this one. I'm picking Glover Teixeira. The guy right now, I've kind of talked him down recently, and I hope this doesn't bite me in the ass, but I had picked against Glover in several of his past outings. I picked against him in Krylov. I picked against him in Kudaleba. I picked against him in his Roberson fight. And you know what? Now I'm picking him to win. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He's basically back in the top front running at light heavyweight, and I think that he can pick up a solid win here against Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, he did come off a win with Gustafsson, but the numbers here really shake out for Teixeira. Teixeira, he is older, but the guy's chin is still there, or it seems to be there in his last 3 outings, and his skill set is still strong. Maybe he's not as fast as he used to be, but his boxing is still tight. You cannot overlook his submission game, and I believe that he can get it done here. He has 17 KOs over his 30 wins and 8 submissions. Anthony Smith is also very competent, 18 KOs, 12 submissions, but we have seen, where if he's in a big situation, which, he performed well in the Gustafsson fight, not so much the John Jones fight, but if he's left thinking about the situation, remember, this guy has 14 losses in his record, he sometimes hesitates to pull the trigger, and he's lost to top-tier talent in the past. He's lost to Thiago Santos back in 2018, John Jones, and the question really, I guess you got to ask yourself is Glover Teixeira still top-tier talent? Well, if I had to ask him how he would like to go out, being 40 years of age, I'm sure he would love to go out, beat Anthony Smith, and make a claim to fight John Jones at some point. And I feel like John Jones would tip his cap to the veteran and go ahead and, potentially beat his ass again. They did meet earlier in John's career, but this is pre or post USADA now, John Jones, Glover, if he's still riding this wave high, I can see how they do meet up, and I can see Glover giving him another challenge. But we'll see how things play out in this matchup. I unfortunately have to pick against Smith. We're picking Teixeira. All right, in our co-main, we have a debuting fighter. Not debuting in the way you might think, although there are some debut fights on this card. But we're going to have Ben Rothwell taking on Ovince St. Preux in his heavyweight debut. So, really kind of an unknown state of affairs with this one. I really like Ovince St. Preux. Very good fighter, right? He's had some ups and downs. I have to assume that the weight cut was potentially the problem there. And, he beat Olenstruck in his last outing, although he did take a lot of damage. He lost to Krylov, lost to Dominic Reyes, lost to Ariel Latifi, also did beat Tyson Pedro in between. And we've seen him go on tears in the past, like when he came off his Ozdemir loss, he went 3 in a row. And so, he has the skill set, he has the mindset. However, how is he going to perform against a very large fighter in Ben Rothwell? Nothing against Ovince. He's a good-sized guy. I'm just very curious about how this one plays out. Preux, though, he does have the reach advantage here. He's a southpaw. I think he could give Rothwell problems. And so, despite the fact that I'm throwing some grains of salt on this pick to kind of lessen the blow if I get it wrong, but I'm picking Ovince St. Preux in this one. The numbers shake out for him. Rothwell, while he is a good, durable product, is not necessarily the Rothwell of old, and I'm not sure how he's going to perform up against a guy like St. Preux. Rothwell, up until his victory over Stefan Struve, was on a heavy decline with losses to Arlovski, Blagoy Ivanov, and Junior Dos Santos. In fact, got to go even back further than that to 2016 to get that Junior Dos Santos loss. So he hasn't been the most active guy. He did fight 3 times in 2019, so I'd have to assume he is back. But I think Ovince is going to surprise him. I think he's going to make a statement that he belongs at heavyweight, and at heavyweight, you get a couple of wins, and you are a top contender. So it has a good pathway. I like Ovince in this matchup, and he's the pick in his heavyweight debut. All right, probably my favorite matchup on the night. We were going to have Alex Fernandez take on Drew Dober. And so Alex Fernandez, he was derailed by Donald Cerrone, but he's looking like he's back, and he's ready to take on all comers because he looked phenomenal in his Francisco Trinaldo outing last time. I really, really like Alex Fernandez in this one. He's a guy with a lot of different skills. He's explosive. We can see that he does have a little bit of a ground game, although it's still only 2 submissions over his 11 wins. But he's a total mixed martial artist, and he has very good footwork, explosiveness. He's a dynamic fighter, and I think he'll be enough to overcome Drew Dober. Drew Dober, also a balanced fighter, but I just don't believe he possesses quite the same skill set as Hernandez. Granted, HarperQuest and Paulo Reyes would tell you differently about Dober because they were both knocked out by him. Dober, just as one other sidebar as well, he does have the experience advantage. He is 22-9 to Hernandez's 11-2, and so he does have a steel trap mindset that I don't think you can give to Hernandez in this one. He just doesn't have the experience. It's going to be a very interesting fight. Both of these guys possess very high-level toolkits to succeed in multiple pathways, but I just like Hernandez here a little bit more in the numbers. I think he's a slightly superior fighter, and I think he's going to surprise everyone when he defeats Drew Dober. We're picking Alex the Great Hernandez in this contest. Another firefight coming ahead. We have one at bantamweight. We have Ray Borg, typically a flyweight, coming in and taking on Ricky Simone. And so in this one, I got to go Ricky all day. Ricky is and we talked about this with the Dominic Cruz Cejudo fight. Didn't play out that way where, the smaller fighter wasn't able to overcome the bigger guy. But, maybe we got to make a special exemption for, Triple C, the Olympic champion. Ray Borg is not an Olympic champion, though. He is a guy that has struggled in the past. He struggled to make weight. He struggled in the octagon. And I think that he's going to be too much for Simone. Simone is coming off back-to-back losses, one to Rob Font, one to Uriah Faber. He was looking like a hot ticket coming into that, but unfortunately took some losses. Whereas when we look over at Borg, back-to-back wins, Rogerio Bontornin, win over Silva. I just think the 6-inch reach advantage of Simone is going to be enough. He also has a great ground game. We know that Borg loves to lean on his wrestling, while Simone goes for a higher takedown rate. And I think that he's going to be able to nullify that wrestling advantage that we've seen Borg have so many times in the past. I am picking Ricky Simone to pick up a W against the Taz Mexican Devil, Ray Borg. All right, in our next contest here, we are going to have Marvin, the Italian Dream Vettori, taking on Carl Roberson. And so in this one, I'm going to side with Vettori. He's had back-to-back wins, granted they were decisions, and he had a split decision loss to Israel Adesanya. He looks like he's all the stuff, and I think that he's potentially just a hair behind a guy like an Adesanya, and he can get it done. We like Roberson here too. He's 9-2. He is competitive, wins in his last two outings, but I honestly don't see him getting it done here. I think he's going to struggle with the superior striking of Roberson, and even though he does have some ground game, I think that Vettori is going to be able to keep him off him, pump that jab out, and ride his way to victory. I am picking the Italian Dream Marvin Vettori in this contest. All right, our next one here is going to be a debuting bout. We have Philippe Linz taking on Andrei Arlovski. And in this one, it is kind of interesting because we don't know much about Linz, but we know that he is a killer PFL product and also spent some time over in Bellator. But he was much more successful in the PFL, having 4 straight stoppages, 3 TKOs and 1 submission, and I hate to break it to Andrei Arlovski's chin, but I think that this is going to be the tale here. Arlovski's chin isn't what it used to be. Linz looks like he's cracking hard, and I believe, even though he's been out of the cage since December 31st of 2018, I think Linz is going to be able to show up in Jacksonville, and even at 34 years of age, prove that he belongs in the UFC and take advantage of the current heavyweight situation. I really like Linz in this one. We can only go off of his past performances that were outside of the UFC and evaluate them as best we can, and I believe he's going to be the one to get it done. Felipe Monstro Linz to pick up a W in Jacksonville. Great dark horse fight coming up at lightweight. Michael the Menace Johnson taking on Thiago Moises. And in this one, I think it's really going to come down to the grappling of Moises versus the striking of Johnson. When Johnson wants to go hard, he will. He will throw down. He's a great volume striker. He's got some pop behind it, a little bit of power, and his takedown defense is pretty good, which I think is going to be the problem with for Moises here. Thiago. I do not believe he's going to be able to score takedowns and keep Michael Johnson on the ground. He is not Khabib. He's not going to be able to execute that kind of game plan against the Menace. The Menace is going to use his reach advantage, use his decent takedown defense, and use his volume striking to keep Moises at bay and ride a victory here. Also, Johnson is riding a 2-fight losing streak, and we also have Moises trying to recoup from a loss as well. So both these guys are looking to get it done. They're looking to get back in the mix, and I like Johnson to do that over our takedown or submission-based fighter in Moises. We are picking Michael the Menace Johnson in this matchup. All right, this one I honestly don't have too much to say. There's very little information on these fighters. They're nearly 500. I honestly don't even know why they're fighting, to be perfectly honest. I don't want to talk too much shit about them, but it's tough to, really throw a lot of analysis at somebody 5-4 taking on a 6-6 fighter. And this is Sijara Eubanks versus Sarah Morris. Sarah Morris has the 6-6 record of the two. I think Eubanks here is a better striker, throws harder. I think she'll end up picking up a win here. It's risky either way, though. I mean, both of these fighters are so hit and miss that it's honestly hard to say who will win. Morris has the height advantage, but both of them have the same reach, and Eubanks does look pretty strong in some of her past outings, so I would like to side with her here, but we'll see how things play out. I am picking Eubanks, but this is a total grain of salt situation. Don't put money on that one, if I had to be honest. In the next one, we are going to have a good fight in here. We're going to have a lightweight bout where Gabriel Benitez is going to be taking on the undefeated Omar Morales. And in this one, I really like Morales. So, he has been in the UFC long. He only has the one fight against Dong Hyun Ma, but Dong Hyun Ma is a good fighter. Okay, he went to Korea. He fought recently back in December, and I think that if he can go to somebody's backyard and put on a great performance, he can do it in Jacksonville, and he can defeat a fighter that I do not believe possesses the skill set to get it done. Benitez is solid, got good ground game. He's an AKA guy. I just don't believe he has the skill set. Look at that when he took on Sodiq Yusuff. He was not able. And Sodiq is a hell of an athlete, but I think he's going to run into a similar problem with a excellent athlete in Omar Antonio Morales. We are picking Morales in this matchup. In our next one, we have a fight that I am looking forward to. We are going to have Hunter Azure taking on a competent opponent in Bryant Keller. But Bryant Keller, I do not believe, is as high a level fighter as Azure. Azure is 8-0. He's still young and up and coming. But at featherweight, I think that he's going to be able to make a statement against Keller here and pick up a great win. I really like the submission game of Azure. I think that it looks tight. He's got good takedowns. His striking volume is good. At the same time, his defense is that much better. He hardly gets hit, whereas Keller eats more than he puts out. And I think that's going to be a problem. I am picking Hunter Azure to pick up a win in this featherweight matchup. Then the last one, we have a debuting fight. We have Chase Sherman taking on Ike Villanueva. In this one, I'm picking Chase Sherman. I think that he has the better skill set. This is also a heavyweight matchup, so realistically, either one could connect, and we'll see what happens. Also, we have to note that Sherman has been in the UFC for a while, and it has back-to-back losses. 3 straight losses, and then Villanueva is coming in as the probably guy that's going to bounce Sherman out of the UFC if he takes a loss. I'm going to go with experience here. I'm going to take Sherman, but bear in mind that Sherman's probably on the way out if he does take a loss to Ike Villanueva. So Chase Sherman in that one. So that brings us to the end here. Let's go over the picks one more time. We are going to have Teixeira, St. Preux, Hernandez, Simone, Vettori, Azure, Johnson, Eubanks, Morales, Sherman, and Linz to round things out. So I hope that you guys are happy with the new format of the show. Like I said, we had a solid performance. Not my favorite performance. I would have loved to have gotten those Patreon picks. But, we'll have some new picks coming out just a little bit later after you see the show. So please head on over to the Patreon. Support the show. I do try to give my betting tips there as well. And there's some other tiers that you can go ahead and take a look at. Just to follow it up, though, we went 7-4 in our last outing, so we still did really well, but we can always do better, and that's what I always aim to do. If you have any questions, though, please send your questions, comments, thoughts, and ideas to fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. Get in touch with me on Facebook, Twitter, at MMA Fight Pick 01. And get in touch any way that you like. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm right. Just tell me something. All right. We'll be back. We're going to have another pick/retrospective show, probably Thursday or Friday. This is the fastest week that I've had, because I cannot remember ever having 2 events in a row. This is some unprecedented stuff. So just to speak about that event on Saturday now, so we got Wednesday, May 13th, and then Saturday, May 16th, we are going to have another card to have picks for. So there'll be 2 podcasts out this week. The main event in that one is going to be Alistair Overeem taking on Walt Harris. We also got some great undercard fights. Some ones that I'm particularly excited for are Claudia Gadelha, Angela Hill. I have a hard time picking Angela Hill, just in general. I haven't crunched it out, so I'll tell you what my opinion is on the next show. But she's kind of a, what's the best word for it? She's an outlier. I have a hard time. She's elusive. I have a hard time locking her down. So we'll see how that one plays out, but I am looking forward to the fight. Dan Ige, Edson Barboza. Barboza makes his featherweight debut. Really looking forward to that one. Really, interested to see if Barboza makes weight. The guy already was pretty ripped, and so I'm not sure how much he could really cut to get down to 10 pounds below at 145. So we'll see how that plays out for him. I'm not the most confident about it, but we'll see. Eric Anders, Christoph Jotko, that one's all right. Song Yadong, Marlon Vera, Cheeto Vera always brings the heat. Loving that one. The Immortal Mac Brown is coming back, so he'll be back on the card. And as we go down here, the damaged Darren Elkins, fan-friendly fighter. He certainly does bring the heat. And those are probably my favorite fighters. There's a decent ladies bout at flyweight, Courtney Casey and Mara Barella, but I think our top picks really that Barboza fight, the Gadelha fight, and then I really like the Marlon Veras versus Song Yadong fight. And then honestly, anytime Matt Brown's fight, he's fighting Miguel Baeza, but anytime Matt Brown fights, I'm always a fan of his. So that pretty much does it for the show. Like I said, I'll be back soon with more fight picks. Thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you don't like this new format or you do like it, please reach out and let me know. I'm open to going back to the old way, but I think this way will be our preferred method going forward. But it is up to you. You tell me what you want, and I'll give it to you. That's the way it works here at the Fighting Spirit Podcast. So until I speak with you again later on, just in a few days, happy fight picking.